Well, greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well, and welcome back to tonight's second half. Before we jump into it, a couple links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost you a cent. Click the like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all of these things really do help this channel to continue to grow and go. And folks, they definitely do matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to today's second half, shall we?
My name is Sophia, and I moved to Louisiana in 2006.
Sophia, thank you for coming on the show today. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. I love listening to all your shows, and I mean, the stories and the way you present them are just so awesome. It's just, I mean, I'm like, oh, sorry, I got another call on my phone.
That's fine.
It's fascinating to hear, and I mean, some of the stories are just like incredible. But I had one way back in 2006, 7, 8. I lived there, just a little town southeast of Baton Rouge, and there was a really nice ranch house. There were several acres in the front of the house and in the back of the house, but just a lot of tall trees, no bushes or anything. And I had a beagle that I would let outside, and once in a while she would get on these scent trails in the yard and in the woods around the back of the yard and just howl and howl really loud. And I mean, for hours she'd be out there. I mean, something really piqued her interest, and it was like a lot more than just a rabbit or, you know, some other kind of animal. I mean, I've never heard her howl like that, right, even in the other states I've lived in. So one morning, I used to get up and make coffee and sit out on the front porch, and one morning I heard this long siren-like wail off in the distance. Across the street was a 600 head of cattle ranch. And the cattle were usually noisy, but this morning they were really quiet. And it wasn't real windy or anything. And I heard this long, long wail, and I'm thinking, gee, that's a really strange ambulance siren. And I'm listening and listening, and all of a sudden it kept repeating, but it would last for about 45 seconds. And it would start out at a little up note and then stay real constant. And then at the very end, like 30, 40, 45 seconds later, it would go down to, you know, a lower note. And I thought that was really strange. And my husband was leaving for work just then, and he came out on the porch with his briefcase, and I said, listen to that off in the distance. Do you hear that? And he listened. I said, I don't know what the heck that is. And then he didn't say anything. He left. He couldn't identify what it was either.
Did it sound organic?
Oh yeah. It didn't sound like a machine. It sounded organic, but it was like a really long wail, like a siren.
Okay.
Like really, really long. And then I had some friends down the street, and later, like a month or two later, it was kind of chilly, but I went for a walk down the street. I think I brought them over some cookies or something. And I was walking back, and There was one big street lamp, pinkish kind of street light. Like it was my house and then a little house and then a patch of woods that almost came up to the street, and then then another house and then more woods after that. But that little patch next to the house next to me was only it would stop maybe 20 feet from the ditch. And in Louisiana, there's ditches everywhere for the rainwater. And I was walking back this one night after dropping those things off, and as I'm walking, I heard this loud tree snap in the woods, and I could tell instantly it was higher up. It wasn't low on the ground. And I heard it, and as soon as I heard it, I stopped walking and jumped sideways to look at it, because I knew it was strange. It didn't sound like a limb naturally falling by itself. It was a deliberate snap, and it sounded like the branch was maybe 2-3 inches thick. It was really loud. Right. So I stopped and I just stood there and looked at the tree line. I couldn't see anything because it was dark in there. I had my hands in my pocket and I just looked and I waited. I waited for probably a minute to see if I could see anything, and I didn't. So I kept on walking. And right after that street light was that next little house and then my house, and I had a 350 foot long driveway through the trees to get to the house, and it was all dark. It was never lit up. So I just continued walking to the front door. Nothing happened. But then later in the summer one time, I was sitting at night on the front porch, and I had my feet up on the railing, and I was just relaxing. I think I was reading a magazine or something, and all of a sudden I heard this really loud, it sounded like a whoo, whoop, it was really long and really loud and really. I thought that my neighbor and his son were playing basketball because they had a basketball net in their backyard there, in their driveway. So I turned and I looked and I couldn't see anything. But I thought, gee, that's odd. That was really loud. A person can't be that loud. So I didn't understand it. But then summertime came and there was a huge pool in the back of the house, a 25 by 50 foot built-in, gorgeous pool. I'd be in all the time. I'd jump out to do laundry or housework and then jump back in the pool all day, but I love this pool. So one night I was in it and I had the pool lights on and I was laying on my back. I can float in the water really easy. I get these little bubbles all over my skin so I can be really buoyant. I don't know how that happens. If I brush them off, they just come right back again. But I was floating on top of the water, looking at the stars. I had soft music on. I think I had soft music on that night, or maybe I didn't. Okay, maybe I didn't. And then all of a sudden, I'm laying there and in the water, on top of the water, and I hear this real heavy breathing, kind of grunting noise. And I ignored it, and I'm still laying there, and all of a sudden I heard it again, and I thought, oh my gosh, my neighbors, both neighbors on both sides of me had horses in their stables. And there was a 6 or 8 horse stable in my yard too, but we never got any horses at the time. But anyway, so I heard this real heavy breathing, snorting sound, and I thought, oh my gosh, what is that? And I got up, I put the towel around me, and I got up and I walked to the fence in the back. The gate door was open. It was a split rail fence with bigger wire on it, and it was wide open, and the yard was pitch black. I could see some lights on to the left at my neighbor's barn there. She had a bunch of barn cats and whatnot, and she had horses. I think she had 2 or 3 horses, but none of them were out. I couldn't see them, but I could still hear the snorting sound. So I'm turning my head back and forth trying to figure out where the heck it's coming from. And all of a sudden, I realized, I stepped out of the fence line, 2 feet out, and I was even more in the dark. The house was behind me, the pool was behind me, and I stepped out to listen, and all of a sudden, as I turned my head, I heard it again, and it sounded like it was 20, 25 feet behind one of the trees to the right of me, where I could see nothing. It was pitch black. And I heard that, and it was so loud, and it sounded so big and so tall, I just turned around and ran right back into the house and shut and locked the door. Everybody was sleeping in the house. I was out alone in the pool by myself that night, but I heard that. I just ran as fast as I could and slammed the door. And I think I went swimming later, like in the week, and I didn't hear it again, so I didn't think anything of it. But then again, the following year in January, I had some neighbors come over. They called me. We'd always, we'd run out of sugar or soda or whatever. We'd help each other out. So I had these two neighbors come over and ask me for some sodas at like 11:30 at night. And they called me. I said, oh, yeah, come on over. I'll give them to you. And it was a freezing cold, like late in the month, January night. I think it was like January 27th, 28th or something. But it was freezing. They came over and one of the guys had a big like hoodie on, and he was kind of tall. And I said, who is that? And he laughed. He says, oh, it's Bigfoot. And I said, don't laugh. Those things are real. They got to be real. And he says, oh, come on. So I gave him the soda. We chatted for a minute. And I'm the adventurous type. I wanted to walk down the driveway with them just for fun. But it was freezing cold, so I decided not to. I said, yeah, okay, we'll talk to you later. Bye. So they turned around and they left. So I went back in the house and started getting ready for bed. And all of a sudden, I heard the phone ring. So I went and picked it up. And it was my friend Derek that was just there with Mark, his cousin, to pick up the sodas. And he was like stuttering. I'm like, what's going on? And he says, Sophia, you won't believe what just happened. I'm like, what? He says, we were walking back. He says, we got to the top of your driveway, and he says, we weren't really talking, but we got on the street, and all of a sudden we heard this thud, and right in front of the street light, he said, all of a sudden when we heard this thud, we both looked up, and he said, we saw this huge creature that had just jumped on the street. He says, it was huge. He says, it was real hairy, and it had really long arms and big. He said it had massive, he was really, very adamant about what he saw. He said it had massive legs. And I'm like, oh, come on, you're pulling my leg, aren't you? And he says, no, I swear to God, I saw this thing. And I'm like, yeah, okay. And he said, I jumped in front of Mark to protect him because, I didn't know what this thing was. And he says, and as soon as it's like swung and saw me, he said in an instant, it was in a crouched position anyway. He said it leaped back over the ditch like a good 15 feet in a split second and tore through those woods. They said they could hear the branches breaking all over. As it was escaping that. Obviously, it was terrified of them, but they had such an incredible sighting because it was under the streetlight. It was level with them on the street. They could see exactly how big it was. There was nothing else around it. They got a good look at it. And I hung up the phone, we got off the phone, and I kind of believed him because he was stuttering and hesitating, and I never heard him speak like that before. I could tell he was kind of in some kind of shock. But I went to sleep. We hung up, and I went to sleep thinking, oh, he's just pulling my leg. It's a joke or something. So a few days after that, I was talking to him about it. I think I ran into him in a store, and I was asking him, what is that all about? And he said, and then he described the whole thing again. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you really did see it? And he was like, yeah. He says, I swear on my mother's life, I saw it. And I'm like, wow. So I kind of believed him a little more. I had kind of heard of them, but I never saw them for myself. So I don't know if they were real or not. Right. So he swore that he actually saw that. So after maybe a week or two, I'm mulling it over in my mind thinking, I'm like, wait a minute, maybe we should, tell somebody about this. And I'm thinking, so I start looking on the computer and I see this BFRO group. So I'm like, oh, wow, I'm going to call him. So I agreed to come over, the researcher, I forget his name. I have it written down somewhere. He agreed to come over and check out what happened. So he did come over a few weeks later, maybe 2 weeks later, and he asked if he could camp out in the yard. And actually in the back of the yard, there was 2 areas on the chain link fence that were pushed down about 4 or 5 feet apart. They were pushed down. It looked like 2 big hands had squashed the fence down like for something to step over it. And we found hair samples stuck to the fence and all kinds of interesting, things. I think there was like a piece of flesh we got. It probably got hung up on the sharper part of the fence as it stepped over. So he asked if he could camp out there. And I said, well, they're going to see you because you're going to be that close. Why don't you camp someplace else, a little further away? And he says, that's right. So he said he's camp up there anyway. And he had listening devices and whatnot. And nothing happened that night, he said. And then he left the next day. But I had a bike, and I would ride down the street to this cul-de-sac. And there was like bushes on the other side of the bayou, the little creek. That's what they call them in Louisiana, bayous. Slow-moving creeks. And one day I stopped on my bike and I was just looking at the water, and on the opposite side of the bushes across the way, I could hear this thundering running all of a sudden, and it was going from right to left and right to left like 3 or 4 times, maybe 5 times, and it sounded like more than one set of real heavy footsteps. And like thundering, it was almost making the ground shake where I stood, and I was across the bayou from it. So I heard that, and they're running and running, and all of a sudden they stop. And I'm thinking, holy moly, they must have caught a deer. They must have been like chasing down something, and all of a sudden they got it, because I couldn't think of anything else except that it was a hunt. So anyway, a week or 2 after that, the same researcher calls me up and said, hey, would you mind if I have a friend come over? He's I don't know if I could say this, but he's with the FBI, and he just wants to take a look around. And I'm like, yeah, sure, I don't care. So he came over, and I toured him around and showed him everything I noticed. And I asked him, I said, are you here on official capacity? And he didn't answer me. He heard me clearly, but he didn't answer me at all. So to this day, I don't know. But hey, I was asking my friend Derek, I said, well, why do you think these creatures, this thing could be in the area? And he said, I was thinking about, like a week later, he got back to me. He says, there's a restaurant down the street, and they're always throwing scraps out in the yards for the coyotes. And I'm like, oh, maybe that's it. They're going to eat something. And every now and then we would hear coyote hunts and other. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm right here.
Oh, my phone beeped. So he said it was, they're probably going after the food over there. But sometimes at night, like walking back and forth to his house and my house, I would hear these like terrifying coyote packs hunting. I mean, you don't want to be outside alone and hear that. It was just terrifying. I mean, they were making all these weird noises and screeching and howling and chasing back and forth. And so I would get home as fast as I could because I was terrified they were going to come and attack me. But the researcher talked to my friend. His cousin wouldn't come. He wouldn't discuss it. He was a hunter, and he said he wasn't going out in the woods anytime soon with a gun at all because what he saw just terrified the heck out of him. And he knew now, that these things are real. Like I was teasing him I was teasing him the night he came over to get the sodas. Oh, don't make a joke about them. They're real. Because I figured all these eyewitnesses have to be correct. They have to be seeing something.
Yeah.
And he stopped hunting after that. But the other fellow came over and he said that one time he was up in Tunica Hills with a relative, and they were hunting at night and trying to hunt deer. They didn't get any, but they had some flashlights, and they kind of got separated. And he never told me this before either until he was in front of that researcher, but he said that they were heading back to the car, and they were bumping their flashlights to communicate with each other where they were. And all of a sudden, they heard this roaring, growling around them on both sides of the ridge. They were moving all around them and growling. I mean, I guess they were Bigfoots, and they were angry. They were in their territory, and they didn't know they were there until they bumped the flashlight. So, it was just getting dark. So they hightailed it back to their car, and they jumped in, they got in okay. They tore off down the country road, and they saw a big one run in front of their headlights and just like go climbing up this hill like really fast. So he stopped the car and he got out, and he could see these like big handprints in the mud where it climbed up really fast. And I was like, oh my gosh. And that was like the first time I heard that story, but he had already had an experience with them. And maybe, he didn't know what they were, didn't want to talk about them because of the stigma of, not discussing it, which
Right.
I don't think it's smart because it keeps, the human intelligence at a lower level. Why shouldn't people talk about strange things that they've seen? Like, for instance, astronauts, when they first went up, saw these red sprites, those like red electricity coming out of the clouds from the upper troposphere, and they didn't want to mention it to their crew or their, the ground control for fear of being ridiculed.
Right.
And now they know that that's a bona fide phenomenon.
Yeah. There's an explanation for it, and things happen. I agree with you that these things should be talked about.
So these stigmas of not discussing unusual things is really, it's stifling the progress, I think, of human intelligence.
Yep.
But anyway, there's a few more stories. So
whatever happened with the so you and your friend, and was the FBI agent there as well when you guys were talking?
Well, he wasn't there when we were being interviewed in my kitchen. When the researcher was interviewed, he came 2 weeks later.
So he just came and just checked out the area and then just left?
Oh, yeah, he wanted a tour of everything that I was showing him everything that I noticed.
Okay.
And they went in the backyard and they got some hair samples off the fence and put them in envelopes.
Okay.
And in fact, I think they said they sent the hair samples to a scientist in California, and he said it's an unknown animal species.
Yeah, that's probably Langley or something like that.
I don't know, but then so I think I talked about the pool.
Yeah, definitely.
That hearing that huge, the animal was huge. Oh yeah, another good one I forgot about. We were walking one night. It was real foggy, and it was after the researchers had come and gone. I think it was February, but it was kind of like a cool, foggy night. And fog is one of my most favorite weather conditions because it's just mysterious and beautiful. And I called up my neighbor. I called up Derek and asked him, "Hey, you want to go for a little walk down the street? It's foggy out." And he said, "Yeah, okay, I'm not doing anything." So he met me at the top of my driveway, and we started walking. We got about maybe 20 or 30 feet, not even almost past my house. And all of a sudden, from that patch of woods that they saw that creature jump out of before, it was foggy. You could barely see anything, but from the direction of that patch of woods, we heard this enormous double grunt that you could hear. The lung power was enormous. It wasn't human lungs that were making the sound. And he stopped. I was talking. As soon as we heard it, he stopped and turned around and raised one eyebrow and looked right at those woods. And I was like, "Wow, did you hear that? That's one of them. It's in the woods there." And I was like all excited because, wow, they're out. It's out there. And then all of a sudden, as soon as I said that, further down the road in the direction where we were headed, we heard another double grunt. And then he whipped his head around, looked that way. And I said, "Oh my gosh, there's two of them. Do you hear that? There's two of them." And he said, "I'm going home." He turned around and he put his hands in his pocket. He looked down and he just marched straight home. He went because they only lived 2-3 houses down the street. So he went straight home. And I was thinking, I watched him walk away. I said, "Come on, they're not going to hurt us. Let's just walk." And no, he didn't have anything to do with it. He just kept walking. So I'm standing there and I'm watching him walk away. And then I'm looking to my right, I'm looking to my left, and I'm thinking, okay, well, I guess I better go home. And I start walking down the driveway. It's this really long, dark driveway. And then like I take another, 10, 20, 30 steps and I'm thinking, oh shoot, I'm all alone out here and these things are there. I sprinted all the way down that driveway as fast as I could go until I got to my front door. And I could barely get my key in. My son was sleeping over at one of his friend's house and nobody else, my husband wasn't home at the time. He was on a trip. So I'm trying to get the key in the door and I'm like a nervous wreck thinking, oh my gosh, these things are out there. And now mind you, I haven't seen them. I don't know what they look like, right? But I'm scared because I just heard them. So anyway, a few years after that, I think 2 years later, I wound up moving to a small little town by Lake Pontchartrain. And I was in my new place for about let's see. I was in one house for about maybe a year, and I would do a lot of kayaking. And I met a bunch of people that would kayak. And one time we were out in the swamps nearby, and as we had to like drag our kayaks through the brush to get to this little swampy area. And as soon as we got in there, I looked to my left and I see this really strange sight. It's like a giant tree, but it's stuck upside down in the mud with the roots sticking in the air. Like it was flat on top because it was the roots. And, they're all like sticking out every which way, but the whole thing was like jammed into the mud. Yeah. Thinking, gee, that's really strange. And I couldn't figure it out. I didn't know, what would do that. It never occurred to me that, a creature, a Bigfoot could do that. But, let's see. So anyway, I lived in that house for about almost a year, and then I moved to a smaller little house right down the road. It was really close. I could see it from my old house. And 2 weeks into living there, it was a really nice evening, and it was August. It was a little hot. I had a ceiling fan on, but I loved the outdoors. I wanted to sleep with the windows open. So I had big sliding glass doors and screens in both the living room next to me and the bedroom that I was in. So it was a real quiet night, and I was just sleeping, and I think I woke up and I rolled over to my right side and I continued sleeping. It was a little bit hot, but I liked it because I could smell, the fresh air and everything. And all of a sudden, like, I didn't know where else to put my kayak in that little house. So I had it right next to my window, right next to my bed. On the deck. It was a raised wooden deck, a little back porch that was about maybe 3 feet off the ground. Right. And it was a yellow kayak. It was right next to the open window. And these windows were huge. I mean, these sliding glass doors were massive, like 4.5 feet across each one. So when I pulled the big heavy door open, I had locked the screen. So I'm laying there sleeping, and all of a sudden I hear bam! And I sat bolt upright, and I knew something just, knocked into the screen and the kayak right next to me. So as soon as I heard that, like within a split second, I sat bolt upright and rolled over to and I'm thinking, oh shoot, something's on my porch. So I walked through the bathroom and come out and head back towards the living room in the next room. It was a really small, long, kind of like little duplex house. But I walk back into the living room and I look out very slowly, cautiously. I walk up to the other open, glass door. The screen's there. It's locked too, but it's wide open. And I'm standing there and I look to my left and I don't see anything. It was kind of hard to see because it was dark. The moonlight, it was a full moon that night, and the moon was behind the house on the roof line. So like I could see the trees like lit up in front of me, but I looked to the left and I couldn't see anything. And then I turned and I looked to the right, and the porch was about, I think I had about another 6 feet, 6, 7 feet to the end of the railing. It had like benches there you could sit on, and then there were some little lower bushes right around it, and then there was trees all in the front, and then there was a tall, like a little skinny crepe myrtle tree there, and it was about 12 feet tall. Well, I'm 5'7", and I'm standing there, and all of a sudden I turn and look to my right, and right at the end of the porch where it turns into a point, about 5 feet from that is this, what I thought was a person wearing a hoodie, but that only lasted for about maybe half a second, because all of a sudden I realized, oh no, that's not clothes, that's fur.
Wow.
And I'm looking at this tall creature standing there. Obviously, I guess it was a Bigfoot. It was hairy, and its head like was a dome and sloped right down into its shoulders. It had shoulder, but it had no neck definition at all, like no neck at all. And it was standing there in the moonlight, and I'm looking at it, and it's swaying. Its hands are down at its side, and it's swaying back and forth, almost imperceptibly. Like you couldn't see but I could tell it was moving back and forth just a little bit. And I'm looking at it, and I'm thinking, what the heck? And I looked down at its arms, and its hands were like our hands are flat. If you hold your hand out flat, it's like a piece of paper, right? But his fingers were kind of, I don't know what it was, were like curled up, and I could see how big and fat and chunky the hands were. Nothing like a human hand. And, typical person would have like shrieked their head off, but I looked at it and I was like, oh, okay, it's something else. It's a creature. It's a biological thing. And it's standing there and obviously was looking at me. It was facing me. So I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, oh no, I've got to be dreaming. This isn't real. So I take my knuckles, my hands, and I grind my knuckles into my eyes like, oh, I'm sleeping, I'm dreaming, I'm going to wake up from this. So I grind both of my knuckles in both eyes. And then I slowly open my eyes again and I look. Well, no, it's still standing there. It's facing me. It stopped swaying. I'm looking at it. Like, I'm like, wow. And then I thought, okay, what's going on here? It's not moving. I'm not moving. I'm like, I wasn't terrified, but I was like fascinated, like, wow, this is one of those things. I thought it was incredible. Here I am getting an eyewitness view of this thing that everybody says doesn't exist. And here it is standing in this yard in the sun, in the moonlight. And I could see it had 2 strips of gray flesh on top of its chest and with a row of fur in the middle. And it was kind of a little bit shiny, not wet. I don't think that it was wet, but it was just like the skin itself had a little bit of a gloss to it. And it was grayish. I could see that. I couldn't see the face at all because it was completely black, completely dark. I couldn't see any eye shine, no definition. I couldn't see any nose, no mouth, no nothing. I could see a little bit of a sheen on the outside of its fur that was lit up in the moonlight. And I could only see it about from where its hands were, and I could see a little bit of in between its legs. I couldn't tell if it was a male or female because it was so dark, but it had a little bit of a slight gloss highlight on the very edges of its fur. And it stopped swaying, and I kept looking at it, and it kept looking at me, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to wait till see what it does. I wasn't scared at that point at all. So
more
I just
fascinated
stopped.
And confused.
Yes, that's right. I was confused is a good word, but I was studying it. I've always been very scientifically minded. I like to know how and why things work and why they happen.
Absolutely.
I'm a cause and effect type person, definitely. But I'm looking at it and studying it, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to wait for it to make a move. So I just stood there. And I stood there, and it's looking at me, and I'm looking at it. I know it could probably see me because I have to have good night vision, but I had no lights on behind me, and I'm just looking at it, and I mean, like maybe 2-3 minutes went by. It's like, we're having a standoff, and I'm waiting for it to do something.
Right.
And then all of a sudden I think, oh shoot. Then I don't know why, like I wasn't picking up anything from it at all in terms of sound or movement. It was just standing there like a statue looking at me. And then I thought, oh shoot, all that's between me and it's like 16 feet away from me, and all that's between us is this little thin piece of screen. And as soon as I thought that, I got like flashes of danger in my head. I don't know why. So I turned around and like dropped down on my hands and knees, and I went over to the little fireplace. In my stress at that moment, and then I started getting scared. I thought, oh shoot, I have to call somebody. I have to call the police. So I went and thought my phone was on the hearth there, and I'm feeling all over because it's dark. I can't find it. So I go and I crawl in my bedroom. I find my phone. And I pick it up and I open it. It was a flip phone. I open it up and I dial 911 and I stop. And I'm like, wait a minute. I can't call the police. They're going to think I'm crazy. I said, I can't do that. They're going to come over here and laugh at me and think I'm an idiot and think I'm crazy and I'm making this up. So I close the phone down and I turn around and I walk back into the living room and I look out the window again and it's gone.
Wow.
It wasn't there. It's gone. And I know it probably saw the light from my phone when I opened it. And it just disappeared. But, okay, so 2 weeks after that, I'm riding my bike down this beautiful paved bike path. And I get to this park area, and there's a ranger there in a uniform, and I told my friend, go up ahead, I'll meet you in a minute, just go keep riding, I'll be right there. So I went up to the ranger and said, hey, can I run something by you? I said, how you doing? Can I run something by you? He says, yeah, sure. He was just getting out of his car. And I told him what happened like 2 weeks before, what I saw. And I figured, okay, he's going to look at me like I'm a nut job, but I figure he's a park ranger, I might as well say something. So I told him, what happened, what I saw, and how big it was, because my porch was raised up like three or 4 feet. I'm 5'7", and when I was looking at it, its head was taller than mine, so it had to be at least 10 feet.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
10 feet.
Somewhere about there, because that's about 8 feet 7. 8'7", so
yeah, real tall. And so I tell him that, and he's got his arms crossed, he's leaning against his car, he's looking down, he's nodding his head, and I'm thinking he's going to say something really, to embarrass me or something, but he looks up and looks straight ahead. No, he doesn't look at me in the face, he looks straight ahead and he nods his head. He says, oh yeah, he said, we've had sightings here in the park before.
Yeah.
So that was great, that was confirmation. I'm like, did you? And he said something funny. He said there were reports that there might be a female with a baby. And I'm like, wow. I said, that's something. I said, they got to be eating the clams out there in the water because the lake's got plenty of these big, like, cherry stone clams. So they're like almost the size of eggs, not quite. Right. And there's tons of them because when I was kayaking there, I, pick them up with my hands and everything. I'd swim in the water. I wasn't afraid of gators, even though I got chased by a gator one time, just once. But,
well, like you said right there, there's plenty of food. You've got water, you've got shelter, and there's food like deer. There's, anywhere, your key active area right there for you, and for them to be at.
Oh yeah, and they were. I mean, I was glad to get that kind of confirmation. But another time, my son and his friend, my son knew what had happened back in, that little town close to Baton Rouge, and he said one time in this new little town by the lake, he said him and his friend were walking towards this bend in the road, which was headed towards the bayou, and they saw this big figure step out of the woods, kind of like shift its body to the left, look at it, and then step right back into the woods again.
Yeah.
Like now it's all developed there, but they saw that and they said they walked straight back to his house because he was concerned about it. And then one night we got real stupid and we said, oh, let's go for a walk and down by the park though. Let's go see what's going on. So we walked down it was another moonlit night. It was also summertime. I stayed close to the trail, and they walked down into the woods. And like, I'm all alone. I'm standing there. I'm kind of like nervous looking around. But they went all the way to this back. It was almost like a power line cut out, but there were no power lines. It was just a clearing. They said they saw something throw a tree in the back behind them. It just launched in the air. Like, I mean, a huge log or tree just went flying in the air. Wow. So they came out of there and came out, and then we all walked back. I don't think we were on our bikes. I don't remember. I don't think we were, but we came back from that. And then there was another time where I was riding on this path, and it was at night, and all of a sudden, like to my left, there were houses all around, but every now and then there's like little clumps of, woods, trees, and tall bushes and whatnot. You can't see through it in the dark. But all of a sudden one night, I'm riding my bike back from, I think I went to get a hamburger or something, and all of a sudden I hear a big, like, garbly grunt to my left. And I was like, I knew instantly that one of them was standing there in the woods watching me ride my bike back. So I let out this squeal. I screeched and like squealed so it could hear me, and I pedaled even faster to get home. I figured, okay, it's grunting at me. I'm going to make noise back, and I'm going to get home.
Yeah.
So I got home, and nothing else happened. But, another time I was riding my bike down alone through the trail, and this garbage smell was following me all the way down the trail. And I couldn't see anything, and I stopped like 3 or 4 times, and I'm looking all around. It was springtime, so things were just like starting to get lush and green, but I'm looking all around, where the heck is this smell? I ride for another, half a mile, and it's following me, and I turn around, and I'm like, where the heck? I didn't know what was going on. I could smell it. And then that job that I had one time, I was way out in the country, and I had to, visit these people, and I parked my car at the end of their driveway, and there was a little patch of woods next to their driveway, and it was pretty dense, but when I got out, I smelled this like really strange garbage, stinky smell. But it was garbage, and it was mixed with something else I couldn't identify. Like, it was about 4 or 5 smells mixed together, and I'm looking around carefully at the road, and there were no garbage cans, there was no debris laying there, there was nothing. Right. And when I got up to the person, to the house, to the porch, the smell disappeared. So it was only in that localized area right by my car. So I talked to the people, and I got back in my car. And when I walked back to my car to open the door, that smell was all around that area there, right by that little patch of woods. I don't know what it was, but it stunk. But that night that I saw it standing in the moonlight next to my porch in the back, I couldn't smell anything. There was no wind. There were no crickets, no frogs, no nothing. But there was a house behind the path, right behind the trees, like about another 20 feet. There was like some grass and then some trees, then the path. And then behind that, there was a house where these people had a dog in like some kind of big kennel or cage. And every now and then I would wake up hearing this cage being rattled really hard, and I'd hear the dog whimpering. The dog wouldn't bark, it would whimper. Mm. And I'm like, holy shoot, that thing must be trying to get at that dog. So my son would sometimes sit on the back porch at night smoking a cigarette. I didn't want him to smoke, but he would sneak them. And every now and then he said that he would hear these big, heavy running footsteps running all the way down that path, which was paved. Right. So it was a nice, really nice trail. And he would hear that every now and then. And then there was another time I was up in another city further north, and there was a river. I forget the name of it. It's a river right there, and I had to park my car and do some paperwork before I got to these people I was seeing. And I put my windows down because it was a nice summer night. Like I said, I love smelling the fresh air because I can smell a lot. I have a very keen sense of smell, so I can smell the different trees and the pine straw and the flowers and everything that bloom. And I'm sitting there, with my windows down, and the river is like right behind these houses to my left, and all of a sudden I hear a wail, like I heard when near Baton Rouge. I heard a long kind of wail, and it was probably by the water, and I'm like, oh, okay, so they're in this area too. So I just.
They're definitely everywhere. They're migrant. So you could have one on your property one day and none the next, or four the next, or in the vicinity.
Oh yeah, and now where I'm living now, one time last year, all the dogs in the neighborhood they weren't barking furiously and ferociously. They were kind of howling softly. And it was really strange because I've never heard them make this noise before, but they were all like carrying on all night long. And I said to my guy, I said, there's something going on. I said, some predators out there, because listen to all the dogs there. And they were carrying on for hours and hours. They started like at 1, 2 o'clock at night, and they didn't stop until like 4:30 in the morning, all night long. So the next morning I go out and I look around, and in the mud behind the house, there's like a shed, and I look and I see this really strange footprint. I took a picture of it too. It's like a triangle. It's flat in the front. It goes back to a point in the back, and it's got 4 toe prints. No claw marks on them. It's got like 4 round toe prints, like dots in the front. It's about maybe 6 inches long.
Do you have that still?
Yeah, I still have that. I don't know what it is. I've never seen that. Have you ever heard of that?
Would you mind sending it to me so I can check it out?
Of course.
All right, awesome. I don't mean to cut you off, but I'm using a new format because my whole recording stuff crashed last week, and I've got about 50 minutes recorded right now. I don't want to push past an hour just because I really want to put this interview up because it's very informative. So I'm going to cut the interview right now, but don't hang up because I'd like to talk to you for a little bit after.
Okay, no problem.
I appreciate you coming on today and sharing.
Oh, my pleasure.
Sharing your information with us. And like you said privately to me, you've got some other stuff that you're willing to share with me and send to me that I'll narrate too. So
yeah, no problem.
Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it.
Oh, it was fun. I'm glad, people can share their experiences because there isn't really no other outlet.
Right, absolutely. That's why I love doing this. It helps people just.
It's scary, but it's fun. I think it's fun.
I agree, and I think everybody else that honestly has had an encounter or is just into this interesting. It's a scientific field that it's, even though it's not, but it is, agrees with you. It's terrifying, but it's fun. It's because you're learning something new. And that's why I like having encounters. People share their encounters because you get to learn something new each day from different people that you talk to. So.
Yeah, scientists talk about visiting other planets to find different forms of life. Oh, I don't think that's really that necessary.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we have things right here that we barely know about.
Absolutely. So I appreciate it. And like I said, Sophia's going to send some other info out to me, guys. So I will have that narrated too. And thank you. Thank you for coming on.
Oh, you're welcome. It was my pleasure. It was fun. I said, it was really fun.
In the very beginning of that interview, Sophia was so nervous and excited that even before the introduction, she was ready to go. Oh my God, it was so funny. What an amazing story and an amazing person. Guys, I hope you all enjoyed this second half as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I'd like to thank you all for supporting the channel. After all, it is your support that keeps this channel growing and going, and what gives folks like all of us a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free, just simply treated with the respect that we all deserve. Thank you. Everyone, please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and friends. These creatures are real. They are out there and dangerous. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless.